Good day, everyone. Today, I want to remind you of a simple but life-changing truth. Leave it to God. Let's face it, life throws challenges at us. Sometimes it feels like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. We're trying to figure everything out: our career, family, relationships, health. But here's the good news: we were never designed to carry it all on our own. God didn't create us to be burdened. He created us to be blessed. Life is often filled with challenges that can leave us feeling overwhelmed and burdened. From career pressures to family responsibilities, health concerns to financial struggles, it's easy to feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. Yet, here's a powerful truth: we were never meant to carry these burdens alone. God, in His infinite wisdom and love, didn't create us to live stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed. Instead, He designed us to live in His peace, grace, and blessings. When we face difficulties, our natural tendency is often to try and fix everything on our own. We strategize, plan, and overthink, hoping to find solutions to the problems that weigh us down. But the truth is, our strength is limited. We weren't created to handle every struggle in our own power. And here's the good news: we don't have to. God doesn't expect us to have all the answers or the ability to solve every issue on our own. Instead, He invites us to lean on Him, to trust Him, and to allow Him to carry the weight we were never meant to bear. There's a beautiful verse in Matthew 11:28-30 where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This invitation is a reminder of God's heart for us. He sees our struggles, knows our worries, and longs to give us rest. But what does it mean to let God carry our burdens? It starts with a heart of surrender. It means acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and that we need His help. It's not about being passive or indifferent to life's challenges. Rather, it's about recognizing that there's a higher power at work, one who is infinitely wiser, stronger, and more loving than we could ever comprehend. Letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're giving God room to step in. Often, when we hold on to our struggles too tightly, we leave no space for God's intervention. But when we release our worries to Him, we allow His peace to fill our hearts and His power to work in our circumstances. Think of it like this: imagine you're holding a heavy backpack filled with all your worries, fears, and anxieties. Carrying it around all day is exhausting, isn't it? Now, imagine someone comes along and says, "Let me carry that for you." Wouldn't it be a relief to hand it over? That's what God is offering us: freedom from the weight of our burdens. The truth is, God's shoulders are big enough to carry anything you're going through. There's no problem too big for Him to solve, no situation too complicated for Him to handle, and no heart touch too deep for Him to heal. He's the creator of the universe, the one who spoke the stars into existence, yet He cares intimately about the details of your life. So why carry what you were never meant to? Why struggle under the weight of burdens when God is inviting you to lay them at His feet? His plan for your life isn't for you to be weighed down by stress and anxiety, but to walk in His peace and joy. The next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, take a moment to pause and remember this truth: you don't have to carry it all. Turn to God, cast your cares on Him, and allow Him to do what only He can do. Let His peace guard your heart, His wisdom guide your steps, and His strength sustain you. You weren't designed to carry burdens. You were designed to live in His blessings. There's something deeply reassuring about the idea that God invites us to cast our cares on Him. It's an invitation wrapped in love, rooted in His desire to see us free from the heavy burdens we so often carry. But what does it truly mean to cast our cares? And why does God ask us to do it? To cast our cares on God is to release to Him the worries, fears, and anxieties that weigh on our hearts. It's not about ignoring our responsibilities or pretending our problems don't exist. It's about recognizing that we don't have to handle them alone. When God says, "Cast your cares upon me, for I care for you," 1 Peter 5:7, He's asking us to let go of the things we were never meant to carry. He knows that trying to bear the weight of life's challenges in our own strength will only leave us feeling drained, defeated, and discouraged. Think of it like this: have you ever seen someone struggling to carry a heavy load, their arms trembling and their steps faltering under the weight? Now, imagine someone stronger stepping in, saying, "Here, let me take that for you." The relief is instant. The weight is gone. And the burden is no longer theirs to carry. That's exactly what God wants to do for us. He doesn't want us to be crushed under the weight of our cares. He wants us to hand them over to Him so that we can walk freely in His peace and strength. But casting our cares requires a conscious act of trust. It's a choice to say, God, I don't have all the answers, but I know you do. I can't see the way forward, but I trust that you are guiding me. It's not always easy to let go, especially when we're used to trying to control every detail of our lives. Yet the more we practice surrendering our cares to God, the more we'll experience His faithfulness in action. One of the most beautiful things about casting our cares on God is that it's not a one-time event. Life will always bring new challenges, but God's invitation remains constant. Every time we face a worry or fear, we can choose to release it to Him. And the best part, God never grows tired of carrying our burdens. His capacity to care for us is infinite, and His love for us knows no bounds. God doesn't just ask us to cast our cares on Him because He's capable of handling them, though He is. He asks us to do it because He genuinely cares about us. Think about that for a moment. The Creator of the universe, the one who holds the stars in place, cares deeply about you. He cares about the things that keep you up at night, the unspoken worries in your heart, and the battles you're fighting in silence. When we hold on to our cares, we're essentially saying, I don't know if I can trust God with this. But when we choose to let go, we're declaring our faith in His goodness and His promises. We're saying, God, I believe that you love me, that you see me, and that you are working all things together for my good. And here's the amazing thing. When we cast our cares on God, we're not left empty-handed. In exchange for our worries, He gives us His peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. Philippians 4:7. It's a peace that calms our hearts and minds, even in the midst of life's storms. So today, whatever is weighing on your heart, whether it's a financial concern, a strained relationship, or an uncertain future, take a moment to pause. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say, God, I give this to you. Lay it at His feet, knowing that He cares for you deeply and that He is faithful to carry you through. Let go of the weight and let Him fill you with His peace, because His arms are more than strong enough to carry your cares. The truth that the Creator of the universe is sovereign over all things and intimately involved in the details of your life is a profoundly comforting reality. Often we forget just how powerful and capable God truly is. We find ourselves overwhelmed by life's challenges, wondering how things will work out and feeling as though everything depends on our efforts. But the same God who created the heavens and the earth, who set the stars in place and formed the mountains, is the God who knows your name, sees your struggles, and cares about every aspect of your life. God's sovereignty means that He is in control of all things, both great and small. Nothing happens without His knowledge, and nothing is outside His power. This is not a distant, abstract idea, it's a deeply personal truth. The same God who governs the universe is also the one who lovingly watches over your life. In Matthew 29:31, Jesus says, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows." Think about that for a moment. If God cares so much about the sparrow small, seemingly insignificant creatures, how much more does He care about you, His beloved child? He knows every detail of your life, from the number of hairs on your head to the dreams and fears in your heart. He's not just aware of your struggles, He's actively involved in them. When life feels uncertain, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everything is out of control. But God's sovereignty reminds us that nothing takes Him by surprise. He sees the beginning from the end, and He's already gone ahead of you to prepare the way. Even when you can't see the full picture, you can trust that God is working behind the scenes for your good. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Trusting in God's sovereignty doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that we won't face challenges, but it does mean that we don't have to face them alone. It means that even in the midst of difficulty, we can rest in the assurance that God is in control and that His plans for us are good. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Sometimes it's hard to see God's hand in the middle of our struggles. We might wonder why certain things are happening or question how they could possibly work out for good. But God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Isaiah 55:8-9. He sees the bigger picture that we can't, and he knows exactly what he's doing. One of the most beautiful aspects of God's sovereignty is that it invites us to rest. When we truly grasp that God is in control, we can let go of the need to figure everything out on our own. We can release our fears, worries, and uncertainties into his hands, knowing that he is more than capable of handling them. This kind of trust doesn't come from blind faith. It comes from knowing who God is, his power, his wisdom, and his love. So, when you're faced with challenges or uncertainties, remind yourself of this truth. The God who holds the universe together is the same God who holds your life in his hands. He is sovereign, he is faithful, and he is for you. Rest in his care, trust his plan, and know that he is working all things for your good, even when you can't yet see it. Letting go of the need to control everything is one of the most liberating yet challenging things we can do. As humans, we naturally crave control. We like to plan, organize, and ensure that everything in our lives happens exactly as we want it to. When things start to feel uncertain, we often double down, trying harder to manipulate outcomes, fix problems, or find solutions in our own strength. But the reality is, the more we try to control, the more we realize how limited we truly are. Life is unpredictable, and no matter how much effort we put in, there are always things beyond our control. Relationships, health, finances, the actions of others, these are just a few examples of areas where our power is limited. And when we try to control things that are out of our hands, it leads to stress, anxiety, and frustration. It's like trying to hold on to sand. The tighter we grip, the more it slips through our fingers. God, in his infinite wisdom, invites us to a different way of living. Instead of striving to control everything, he calls us to trust him and surrender our need for control. Letting go isn't about giving up or being passive. It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and trusting that God does. It's about recognizing that his perspective is far greater than ours and that his plans for us are good, even when we can't see the full picture. Proverbs 3:5-6 beautifully captures this idea. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. When we let go of control and trust God, we're no longer relying on our limited understanding. Instead, we're placing our confidence in his infinite wisdom and guidance. The struggle to control often stems from fear. We fear the unknown, failure, or things not going the way we hoped. But fear is a poor master. It keeps us in a state of constant tension, always trying to anticipate every possible outcome. God doesn't want us to live in fear. He wants us to live in freedom. And that freedom comes when we release our grip and allow him to take over. Consider this: when we hold tightly to control, we're essentially shutting God out of certain areas of our lives. We may pray and ask for his help, but then we turn around and act as if everything depends on us. It's as though we're saying, God, I trust you up to a point. But true surrender means fully opening our hands and hearts to him. It means saying, God, I trust you with everything. I trust you with my relationships, my future, my finances, my health. I trust that your plans for me are better than anything I could plan for myself. One of the most incredible things about surrendering control is that it creates space for God's power to work. When we let go, we invite him to step in. And when God steps in, miracles happen. The Bible is full of stories of people who experience God's supernatural provision and guidance when they surrendered their situations to him. From the parting of the Red Sea to the feeding of the 5,000, these miracles remind us of what can happen when we trust God and allow him to take the lead. Letting go doesn't mean that challenges will disappear overnight or that everything will unfold exactly as we want, but it does mean that we'll experience a peace that surpasses all understanding, knowing that we're not walking through life alone. Philippians 4:6-7 tells us, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So the next time you find yourself clinging to control, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, am I trusting God with this? Or am I trying to handle it on my own? Then take a deep breath and release it to Him. Surrender doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong in the one who holds all things together. When you let go, you're not losing control, you're placing it in the hands of the one who knows exactly what to do. Trust Him and watch Him work in ways that will amaze you. Learning to be still and trust in God is one of the most profound and transformative lessons we can embrace. In a world that constantly urges us to stay busy, solve problems, and fix everything ourselves, the idea of being still can feel counterintuitive. Yet, it is in this stillness that we find God's presence, His guidance, and His peace. Being still doesn't mean being inactive or indifferent to what's happening around us. It's not about ignoring our responsibilities or pretending life's challenges don't exist. Instead, it's about adopting a posture of faith and rest in the midst of life's storms. It's the ability to quiet the noise in our minds and hearts, to pause in the busyness of life, and to trust that God is at work even when we can't see it. In Psalm 46:10, God says, "Be still and know that I am God." This powerful command is both an invitation and a promise. It's an invitation to stop striving, stop worrying, and stop trying to control everything. It's a call to shift our focus from our problems to God's greatness. The promise is that as we become still, we will come to know God more deeply, His power, His love, and His faithfulness. One of the greatest barriers to being still is the restless nature of our hearts. When we face uncertainty, our instinct is often to act, to do something to regain a sense of control. We plan, strategize, and overanalyze, hoping to fix things in our own strength. But in doing so, we often miss the opportunity to experience God's supernatural intervention. It's when we stop trying to fix everything ourselves that we make room for God to step in and work on our behalf. To be still is to trust that God is already at work, even when we don't see immediate results. It's about believing that He is fighting battles we cannot fight, opening doors we cannot open, and orchestrating things in ways we could never imagine. Isaiah 40:31 reminds us, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Waiting on God isn't passive, it's an active, expectant trust in His timing and His plan. The world often measures success by how much we achieve and how hard we work, but God's kingdom operates differently. In His kingdom, rest is not weakness, it's an act of faith. It's acknowledging that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. When we choose to be still, we're declaring, "God, I trust you more than I trust my own efforts. I believe that you are able to do immeasurably more than I could ask or imagine." One of the most beautiful examples of stillness and trust in the Bible is found in Exodus 14. As the Israelites stood trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's advancing army, they were filled with fear and uncertainty. But Moses said to them, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Exodus 14:14. And what happened next? God parted the Red Sea, creating a way where there was no way. This miraculous event is a reminder that when we are still and trust in God, He can do the impossible. Stillness requires us to release control and let go of the need to have all the answers. It means resting in the assurance that God is sovereign and that His plans for us are good. It's about trusting His character, even when His ways don't make sense to us. This kind of trust brings a peace that the world cannot offer, a peace that calms our hearts and minds, even in the midst of chaos. When life feels overwhelming, take a moment to be still. Turn off the distractions, quiet your thoughts, and focus on God. Remind yourself of His promises and His faithfulness. Allow His presence to fill your heart with peace and hope. Trust that He is in control, and know that being still is not a sign of defeat, but a declaration of faith in the one who holds your life in His hands. Surrendering to God's will is one of the most profound acts of faith we can make, yet it's often one of the hardest. As humans, we have our own plans, dreams, and desires. We envision how our lives should unfold and the outcomes we think are best. But surrendering to God's will requires us to lay all of that down, to trust in His greater wisdom, and to align our hearts with His purpose for our lives. It's not a sign of weakness or defeat, it's a demonstration of trust in the one who knows us better than we know ourselves. Surrender begins with acknowledging that God's plans are infinitely better than ours. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." While we may only see a small piece of the puzzle, God sees the entire picture. He knows what's best for us, even when we don't understand his ways. Often the struggle to surrender stems from our desire for control. We want to dictate how things should go because it gives us a sense of security. But the truth is, holding on too tightly to our own plans can lead to disappointment and frustration. Life doesn't always go as we expect, and our limited perspective can't always foresee the bigger story that God is writing. Surrendering to God's will means letting go of the illusion of control and trusting that he is working everything out for our good, even when the path seems unclear. A powerful example of surrender can be seen in Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Faced with the weight of the cross and the suffering that awaited him, Jesus prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, yours be done." Luke 22:42. In that moment, Jesus modeled what it means to surrender completely to the will of the Father. He didn't deny the pain or the difficulty of what lay ahead, but he trusted that God's plan was perfect. Surrendering to God's will doesn't mean that life will be free from challenges or hardships. In fact, there are times when God's will may lead us through seasons of difficulty or uncertainty. But even in those moments, we can have confidence that God is with us, guiding us and working through every situation for his glory and our ultimate good. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." When we surrender, we open ourselves to the fullness of God's blessings. Holding on to our own plans can limit us. But when we let go, we make room for God to do immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine. Ephesians 3:20. Surrendering to his will allows us to walk in alignment with his purpose, which leads to a life of peace, fulfillment, and meaning. Surrender also brings freedom. Carrying the weight of trying to figure everything out on our own can be exhausting. But when we release our plans and desires into God's hands, we experience a peace that comes from knowing that he is in control. Philippians 4:6-7 encourages us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." It's important to remember that surrender is not a one-time event, it's a daily choice. Each day we have the opportunity to trust God with our lives, to let go of our own plans, and to embrace his will. This requires humility, faith, and a deep understanding of his love for us. If you're struggling to surrender, start with prayer. Talk to God honestly about your fears, your desires, and your uncertainties. Ask him for the strength to let go and the faith to trust in his plan. As you do, you'll discover the beauty of living a life fully surrendered to him. It's a life marked by peace, purpose, and the assurance that you're walking in step with the creator of the universe. Surrender is not about losing, it's about gaining everything that God has in store for you. In conclusion, life is a journey filled with uncertainties, challenges, and moments where we feel powerless to control the outcome. But in these moments, we are reminded of a profound truth: we were never meant to carry the weight of life on our own. God, in his infinite love and wisdom, invites us to place our burdens in his hands, to trust his timing, and to surrender to his will. When we recognize God's sovereignty and care, we can let go of our fears and stop striving to control what is beyond our power. We can rest in the assurance that he is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail for our good and his glory. By being still, trusting in his promises, and surrendering our plans to him, we open our hearts to his peace and our lives to his miraculous intervention.